Hello, process improvers. Have you ever been at an event and introduced yourself as a process improvement professional and saw the other person cringe or walk away or not really want to chat to you anymore? I know this happened to me a lot in my early career, and I really didn't understand why people disliked continuous improvement. What experiences did they have that caused them to be disinterested or to have a negative opinion of continuous improvement? In this live series that I'm doing, Unstuck, we're going to talk about all the things that make CI teams win versus spin, right? So, all those things that get us stuck that we can't seem to get out of. What I want to see is continuous improvement teams really taking on those essential elements and seeing success well into the future. I'm Amanda Zimmerman. I've been doing continuous improvement for over 15 years all over the world. And today I want to talk more about why does continuous improvement fail? Hmm. Why does it fail? Why do people cringe and look at us like they want to run away? And what I've done this week is I've gone ahead and had the chance to learn a little bit about this week, take a deeper dive into why this is happening. And so I looked at about 30 articles across continuous improvement, process improvement, Lean Six Sigma, even a few in operational excellence. And I looked at those different reasons that consultants or individuals have written articles that they said these are the primary reasons continuous improvement fails. And in all of these listicles, I was able to kind of identify those themes that we're seeing over and over again. So, one, the deployment purpose, the approach, the strategy we've chosen, the methodology we've chosen isn't right or isn't working or isn't being adopted by the business. The second most common reason was project management and process measures. So we're not actually managing our projects effectively. We're allowing the scope to creep. We're not actually moving towards a data driven approach. We don't actually have measurements that validate how the current state is. The third most common, or in tie for second, was culture shift and change management. Now, that's looking at the organization as well as the projects individually. So, what we see is that organizations don't have a mindset shift that they go after. They just go ahead and put those tools in and say, hey, these are going to work. Or when we lead projects, we're not managing that change with our people. And finally, I've got to tell you, I thought leadership buy-in or support would be at the top, but it actually ranked fourth on this list, looking at all of these different articles. And that leadership buy-in or support, which I think is really core and necessary in everything that we do in continuous improvement, that came in as the fourth most common reason. Now, I will call out here, as I said earlier, I looked at continuous improvement in a very broad sense. I used process improvement, Lean Six Sigma, even operational excellence. So this we'll talk about later some of the problems with taking that approach. But just to take a deeper dive into these four main areas that I called out, because I think it's really interesting as you look at your program. How do you unpack these? How do you see what's working and what's not working for you? Do you see things within this that are indicative of challenges that you're currently experiencing? Or the flip, do you say, hey, my leadership is so bought in. This is nothing that I've ever experienced before. It's interesting to see others share that, right? I'll be keen to understand from you where you see yourself falling in that. So, this first one, deployment purpose, approach, or strategy. So, looking at these top four reasons, this one's really talking about things like the business management system doesn't support it. So there's no structure. You've taken on continuous improvement, but you haven't created an integration into the organization for it actually to be adopted. You've chosen maybe Six Sigma when really the business would have benefited more from kata, right? So maybe you chose the wrong approach. One of the things that we do tend to do because we like process and process improvement is create an overly bureaucratic system, is try to go for perfection because management wants to make sure that they're getting their return on investment. But that can be a double-edged sword because that can also cause too complicated of a system for us to be able to take on. And finally, one of the call outs there, I think that's really important, is that short term thinking. We're not looking for long term projects about how do we make this business sustainable in the long term. We're looking for those quick wins or those short term things that we can change today to be better. So, not looking at this as an integration in the long term so much as just saying in the next 6 months, how is this going to impact our organization? The second most common reason was that project management and process measures. So, this is where we see people choosing the wrong projects, where we have scope creep, where maybe we don't actually look at the impact the solutions are going to have if we implement them. We may also just be getting band aids. We're not actually getting to that root cause. And again, that lack of measurements. We don't actually have data. The data isn't at the quality that we need to make good data driven decisions. I'm sure these are things that you've seen in some capacity in your organizations. The third most common, culture shift and change management. I really can't look at this without seeing that word fear, right? That fear of being made redundant or laid off is such an overarching piece of why continuous improvement sometimes doesn't get adopted, or why when I introduce myself to somebody at an event, they're like, oh, we had one of your consultancies come in and now we've reduced by 20%, right? So we want to be able to look at that and say, what does continuous improvement mean to us? What are we going to use it for? Are we going to use it for more, let's say, nefarious means, or are we going to use it for good, right? So that fear to me is a huge reason why some of these programs don't take off. The other pieces are looking at this as a collection of tools rather than a way that we do our work. So, not actually thinking of this as a culture shift, but instead looking at this as we are going to do the 5 principles of lean. We are going to implement pull. We are going to implement Kanban, but we're not actually shifting our team to a scientific mindset, to scientific thinking, right? To critical thinking. And when we miss out on that, we don't really get kind of the secret piece of why these pieces work and can transform an organization. And then finally, the one that I thought would be the red flag that would be head and shoulders above it all is leadership buy-in or support. And to be fair, it's probably the one that had the most consistent language where over and over again people either said leadership buy-in, leadership support, management buy-in, management support, right? So it is one that seems to be blatantly obvious to people and seem to be often at that number one slot, or the number one reason people felt like continuous improvement failed their teams. So if we look here at some of these, so commitment from the organization, so not just from leadership or executive, but from the organization as a whole. Now it's up to the leadership to create that commitment, to be committed to these tools. No support from upper management, diminished interest in top management. So this is a flavor of the month. This is the buzzword, right? That people pick up and they start to implement it and they send it off and then they walk away and don't finish that commitment. And this is why I think I've seen over and over again in several organizations that I've gone into, this is their third round with continuous improvement or Lean Six Sigma. This is the second time they've taken on this initiative. The team's been around for 10 years, but they haven't really seen the benefits that they want to see, right? And this is really why I'm keen to go deeper into this issue and understand what are the reasons that we undercut our teams and aren't able to have the results that we're looking for in continuous improvement. And finally, in there, I think it starts to call out some of those middle management issues. Now, I will say, as I talk about this unstuck kind of focus that I have, I am talking about non-manufacturing. I'm not interested so much in seeing how lean and Six Sigma and process improvement work in a manufacturing context. Instead, I really care about seeing how does it work in the service industry, in transactional industries, in places where we don't have a clear product that goes from machine to machine, because this is really the area that I think we haven't constructed the right elements to give our team success in. Right? We've said get a green belt and that's going to fix all of your issues. But as we can see here, maybe green belt wasn't the right deployment or purpose or approach. right? Maybe those DMAIC projects, those are too detailed or not right sized for the organization. And so when I looked this up, I did not differentiate between consultancies or individuals talking about manufacturing contexts and non manufacturing, but instead kind of CI as a whole. And I will call out there are some red flags here to me that just straight off the bat say, we are going to have a problem here. And I think it's reinforced by all of those reasons that we just saw. So the first one I'm going to call out is ignorant leadership. So I'm not going to say lack of management buy-in, lack of leadership support. Instead, I would say I think leadership quite often is unaware, or they don't know what they don't know. So leadership has adopted this approach saying, yes, I care about the bottom line, or I care about being continuously improving, but they don't actually understand what that commitment is. So if your leadership team can't define for you their role in continuous improvement or can't define for you what continuous improvement is, ooh, that is a red flag. And I've always seen this in organizations because I love to ask this question to the CEO or the COO is what is your role in continuous improvement? So if you have the chance this week to talk to some of your leadership team or executive team, ask them that question. What is your role in continuous improvement? And see if their answer gives you confidence that they know what continuous improvement is and that they're taking an active role in it. If not, there might be an opportunity there to get more engaged with that executive team because it's a place where things really can fall apart. The second red flag I'll call out here, because it really kind of jumped out to me in three of those different reasons anyway, is believing in magic, right? And this is a fault of leadership as well. That we say we're going to take on continuous improvement and it's going to magically transform us into this organization that's efficient and effective. I'm going to hire 3 black belts and I'm going to send them out there to lead projects. And in 6 months, they're upset because magically those 3 black belts have not changed the organization, have not transformed it. But at the same time, what you see is when those black belts, when those people that are leading projects ask for resources, they say, what do you mean? You're supposed to go fix it, right? I hired you to facilitate the project and to go fix it. How come you're not fixing it? Black belts, green belts, continuous improvement practitioners, they are there to lead a team, to lead those SMEs through this improvement journey. They are experts on the tools, not on the process, right? And so they're not there to just go into that and sit maybe on the shop floor and watch, let's say this was manufactured, and watch how the product moves and then go up to someone and say, okay, we're going to change these settings. Now, especially in non-manufacturing environments, right? It's not about changing the settings on the machine. It's not about just sitting there and watching and then saying, I know better than the people that have been working this job. I know better than people that have been working this job for the last 40 years or that have been doing 50 hours of work a week for the last 5 years. I'm not going to go into a place and tell somebody that, right? And so this is what management sometimes does is they think that this is some magical thing that they're going to send you in and magically you can change it without access, without time with the resources, without time with the SMEs, without the support of management to actually make big changes. Right now, you can go in and you can see things and you can make them change, but they're not going to stick. Especially when you're talking about people's behaviors, about the way that they work, about maybe clicking on certain places or using certain tools. They aren't going to stick if they don't come from the people doing the work, if they don't come from Gemba. So Lean Six Sigma continuous improvement isn't magic. It's not, I'm going to hire a few people and throw them in and magically it's going to happen. It is a culture shift. It is a mindset shift and it requires that leadership support, that leadership commitment of resources of people across the organization so that you can lead improvements that actually have an impact. So these are some of the red flags that to me, as I looked at all these different reasons, it just kind of stood out to me of these are ways that we are undercutting the work that we do, that we are setting people up so that they're not successful, so that will be maybe disappointed or frustrated because a change has been pushed on them, right? So the same thing in believing in magic. Sometimes when we do this and we send somebody in there and they say, now you're going to start doing this, people don't like being told what to do. People don't like being told things that they're experts in that they need to change, right? So we want to make sure that we aren't continuing that belief in magic, that we're very clear about what resources that we need to be successful, right? And so if you go into a new job, new organization, these are some of the questions or things that you can think about as you try to understand their culture and whether or not they're going to be successful. Sorry about the dogs in the background. I know you can probably hear them barking. But just before we go here, next week, what I want to talk more about is what is continuous improvement. So I mentioned up here that I looked up Lean Six Sigma, process improvement, quality, continuous improvement, and operational excellence. Those are kind of the things that I'm putting under the continuous improvement umbrella. But that might not be correct. I mean, operational excellence, I'm not sure if that's a bit of a cousin or belongs under it. And what do we really mean by continuous improvement? What do we mean by process improvement? This is something I want to delve into further and kind of understand the roots or the purpose of it today. How are we using these terms today? Now, if you have a CI program that's just really going well, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to schedule some time with you to chat more about it. If you'd like to share some of the challenges you've seen or experienced, I'd love to talk about that as well as I pull all this information together for Unstuck. I will give a shout out to Alan Leduc and Trish Wilson this week, who I did have a chance to chat to a bit and learn more about the cool stuff that they're doing and the way that they implement continuous improvement across the world. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.